Yeah, so we were talking about that the Buddha encouraged everybody who heard about the Pure Land to have the aspiration to be born there so that they can meet Amitabha and other great practitioners and enjoy the Mahayana Dharma and have all the good circumstances for becoming awakening. So then the question arises, isn't it selfish to want to be born in the Pure Land when so many sentient beings are suffering in the three realms? Shouldn't we remain in the world with compassion in order to benefit them and lead them to awakening? So this is a question that His Holiness Dalai Lama often puts to people who do a lot of POA practice. Yeah, POA is the practice, one of the practices of transforming, not transmitting, transforming, transferring, thank you. It was trans something. So, so transferring the consciousness to the Pure Land. Okay, so there's some lamas who really emphasize that practice, and then people do that. And sometimes they even get a little sign at the top of their crown, a little fluid comes, or you can press it and there's a little soft spot or something like that. His Holiness is not very keen on that practice because I think it's because the motivation of many of the people who do that practice is basically to have a shortcut so that they don't have to have any suffering themselves, okay? Or, so that's in the Tibetan tradition, the Chinese tradition, not wanting to get born in the lower realms, and so let's shortcut that and go to the Pure Land where we won't be, okay? But in those cases, and here we're talking about people with a specific kind of motivation. The motivation is not one of bodhicitta. The motivation is one of self-centeredness, and simply wanting to avoid pain for oneself, not caring about others at all. Okay? And so for that reason, His Holiness is really not keen on people doing the Pure Land practice. Okay? And there's a good reason for it, yeah? If you don't have the right motivation, then it seems like we're just perpetuating our samsaric motivation, and we'll be born in a lotus flower that is not going to open anytime soon because our motivation stinks, okay? So when this same question, now here you're going to get different answers from different people, okay? So Geshe Thupten Pelsang, who was one of the Geshes you studied with, when I was talking with him about this, or actually I would listen to some teachings he gave about Abhirati, which is Akshobhya's Pure Land. And he, very clearly wants to be born in a Pure Land. And he says, it's because if you have really earnest Dharma aspiration, but you aren't at a stage in your practice where you can guarantee that a negative karma is not going to ripen at the time of death and throw you into the lower realms, then it seems like a better situation to aspire to be born in a Pure Land and then, practice there and attain awakening there, because your long-term motivation is to become a Buddha for the benefit of sentient beings. So your motivation isn't just, I don't want to suffer, I don't want to do the hard work on the Bodhisattva path. The motivation is to be able to attain the Bodhisattva practice without spending eons in the lower realm due to having some negative karma that we haven't yet purified. Okay? So that's what he says in response. Then there's a 10-time master named Chi Yi, excuse my Chinese pronunciation, please correct me if you know their proper names. And so he responds to that kind of doubt, saying that there's two kinds of bodhisattvas. Okay, so one kind has practiced the bodhisattva path for a long time and has attained fortitude regarding the unborn and the empty nature of phenomena. Okay, so fortitude regarding the unborn is the ability to bear the seeing emptiness emptiness, not necessarily directly, but at least having an inferential understanding of emptiness. So there's three levels on which bodhisattvas may gain the fortitude of the unborn. Here, unborn is often code for emptiness. Things are unborn, they are not inherent, they do not inherently arise. So one is the bodhisattva on the path of preparation. So those are sharp faculty bodhisattvas that can attain the fortitude of the unborn on the path of preparation when they gain the unity of serenity and insight focused on emptiness. Okay, those are the sharp faculty ones. The middle faculty ones attain the fortitude of the unborn when they attain the path of seeing, which is when they first have direct non-conceptual realization of emptiness. And the dull faculty bodhisattvas, they don't obtain the fortitude of the unborn until they attain the eighth ground. Yeah, so that's way up there, okay? Takes them a bit longer. So there's these three kinds of bodhisattvas. Yeah, okay, so these bodhisattvas who have attained the fortitude of, able to bear the unborn, will fearlessly manifest in samsara to aid sentient beings. And their realization of emptiness is what gives them the confidence and the fortitude to be able to do that, okay? Because they know they will not be, they have a lot of control of their mind, and they're not going to be creating more negative karma for the lower realms. They're not going to be wasting their time in all sorts of stupid agios, okay? The second kind of bodhisattvas, as well as us ordinary beings who aspire for awakening, have not attained the fortitude regarding the unborn, and the empty nature of all phenomena. And so our minds are not yet strong enough to resist the power of the afflictions. Mm-hmm. And so the afflictions rise forcefully in our mind, and it's like, you're swimming in the Pacific Ocean, which is sometimes not so Pacific, and a huge wave crashes on top of you, and, there you go. So when we don't have the inner strength yet, by virtue of our Dharma practice, to, not succumb to the force of the afflictions, then it's wise, he says, to seek rebirth in the Pure Land. And so this is for ordinary bodhisattvas, on the path of accumulation, and for ordinary beings who really sincerely wish to attain Buddhahood. Maybe they don't have spontaneous bodhicitta yet, but they have that wish. Okay, so in that case, you can see these are beings who know something about bodhicitta and admire it and respect it and want to take that path. So they're not just seeking, like, I don't want to suffer, and so give me the easy way out. Okay, so he says, see, these two kinds of bodhisattvas. So for those people, if they weren't to aspire for rebirth in the Pure Land, but take birth in cyclic existence, then they might just be totally overwhelmed by their contact with sense objects and by the old habits that get them engaged in destructive actions. And so for those people, for the time being, according to where they are at their practice right there, they should stay near the Buddha, and near high practitioners by being born in the Pure Land. Okay, because in that way they can learn the Dharma, they can purify, they can create merit, they can be supported by a good environment so that they continue to advance on the practice. Okay, and so the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras compares this to a baby bird whose wings are not yet fully formed and strong. Yeah, you don't send that baby bird out to fly from North America to South America, for their transmigration cycle. Yeah, you take care of them. You let their wings grow. You let them mature. You let them become strong. Okay, so it's the same with people practicing the Dharma. Yeah. So if we have, clearly the ability to control our rebirths and strong bodhicitta, and we've attained that kind of fortitude of the unborn, then we should pray to be born in, mundane realms and benefit sentient beings here. If we don't have that, then it's good to aspire and create the causes for rebirth in the Pure Land. Yeah. But of course, that doesn't mean if you do it with the attitude because you want to escape benefiting sentient beings, you just want to get to enlightenment and forget these nutty sentient beings, that's not going to work either by going to the Pure Land. Because when you get to a certain stage of the path in the Pure Land, then you have the ability to manifest in the world. And of course you have bodhicitta and compassion. And so then you're going to send, emanations back down to the world to deal with all the sentient beings and help them at that time. Okay? So, we're always coming back to the thing that if we're seeking a shortcut out of genuinely practicing and genuinely facing our afflictions, we're going to have to keep looking. Yeah, because Buddhism doesn't really have one. They say that certain paths are quicker, but that's for people who are very diligent and have very strong minds and really practice with a lot of effort. Okay, if we aren't one of them, then that fast path is not going to be so fast for us. Okay, then there's another doubt that may arise that says, isn't it better to use our time to try and realize the nature of reality, which will lead directly to awakening, rather than to recite the Buddha's name and aim for rebirth in the Pure Land? And by inference, do all these other practices of creating merit. Shouldn't we just focus on trying to realize emptiness, realize it, eliminate the afflictive obscurations, and be done with samsara? Yeah. Why recite the Buddha's name, and you do ethical conduct, and do meritorious actions, and all this other stuff so you can get born in the Pure Land? Why not just meditate on emptiness? Okay. So another master named Yen Shao asks us to examine our practice. Okay, so here's what he asks us. Are we sure we have a correct understanding of emptiness? Okay. Have we entered a path? Have we actually entered a hearer and solitary realizer path by having a spontaneous renunciation of samsara, or entered the bodhisattva path by having spontaneous bodhicitta? Second thing to check. Next, at the time of death, are we sure that appearances due to our destructive karma will not appear to us? Okay, are we sure we will not have an unfortunate rebirth and will instead be born as a human being with every single one of the conducive conditions necessary to practice Dharma? Are we sure about that? Anybody sure? Are we sure we will not have an unfortunate rebirth and will instead, I just read that. If we are sure about these things, or if we are not sure about these things, rather, then it's better to recite the Buddha's name, keep ethical conduct, engage in the 6 perfections, dedicated for being born in the Pure Land. And at the same time, keep on with learning, reflecting on, and meditating on the teachings. Okay? So if we're sure about all those other things, then yes, put all your time into trying to realize reality. Yeah. But if you haven't created the foundation for being able to understand emptiness and realize it directly, then create that foundation before you just go off to your cave to meditate on emptiness. Yeah, so this is, one of the things that new practitioners want to do, especially in the Tibetan tradition, Chinese tradition too. All these, the hermits in the mountains, the meditators meditating in solitary retreat. And, we just want to go off and be like these people and attain, full awakening in this lifetime. And, we hear Milarepa did it. Yeah, so, and we're told if he can do it, why can't I? And he did all these horrible things like kill 35 people beforehand, and he still attained awakening. I didn't do that, so I should have it easier than Milarepa. Okay, so they tell us that story. What they don't tell us was that Milarepa had practiced diligently for 500 previous lives. Yeah. And they do tell us the story of how Milarepa built the towers for his teacher, how he relied on his spiritual mentor, Marpa. Yeah? Do we rely on our spiritual mentor like that? Okay. Would you build a 9-story tower out of stones that you had to carry on your back if your spiritual mentor asked you to do it? Yeah. Or even demanded that you do it? Would you do that? Yeah. Oh, you mean shoveling to the cabin or the place where you live, not to where other people live. Yeah. So, the whole thing is you have to create the cause before you are going to get the result. So we have to start with the basics, where we're at, which are already hard enough for us, aren't they? Tilopa told Naropa to jump off a cliff. They stood at the edge of a cliff, and Tilopa said to Naropa, if I had somebody who was a real disciple, he would jump off this cliff. And Naropa jumped. His bones were completely broken. Yeah. But Tilopa fixed him up through his magical powers. Yeah. Are you going to jump off a cliff if your teacher tells you to do that? Does your teacher have the ability to have magical powers to put you back together like Humpty Dumpty? First of all, I don't think you jump off the cliff, so then it doesn't really matter if the teacher has. Yeah. But we just look, and we have to start where we're at and grow slowly. Okay, so so continue learning about, reflecting on, meditating on emptiness, but let's practice the basics and learn how to have a good relationship with our spiritual mentor, to develop the very good ethical conduct, to have the aspiration, genuine aspiration for liberation, which means overcoming the clinging to the happiness of only this life, and of course bodhicitta. So let's spend some time, creating those. It doesn't mean neglecting emptiness. Of course we should, meditate on emptiness, but maybe this isn't the time for us to run off and to our cave, okay? Because you see, if we ran off to a cave, we're going to want baseboard heating in our cave, an aircon system for the summer, cozy comforters, a nice stove, Of course, our email and our smartphone have to be able to work up there in the cave, So you have to be able to get online and get on the whatever system it is that makes your smartphone work, So we have all these needs that we have to have. Okay, so then, so what really does create the cause for rebirth in the Pure Land? And it seems, when you examine the different sutras and also the commentaries, that the Buddha and the lineage masters changed, or put it this way, not changed. They spoke according to the mentality of the audience they were addressing. Okay? Because they wanted everybody to have this kind of aspiration and hope and optimism and so forth in their life. So they spoke according to how those different people think. Okay? Just as in the same way now, we see that spiritual mentors guide different disciples in different ways because the disciples need different things. And so that's the consistency that you see, is that everybody is guided according to where they're at. It's not that everybody follows the exact same practice and the exact same guidelines, because some people need this and some people need to avoid that, and they need something else. Okay? So, of course, what we think we need in our practice is not necessarily what we need. Okay? Because we need comfort, we need people to talk to us respectfully, we need people to request us to do things, not demand that we do things. We need people to say please and thank you. We need to be noticed in the group after we've accomplished something. We need somebody to check in on us even when we present the outer image of an ice cube that doesn't want to be with anybody. So what we think we need isn't always what we need. Okay, we need somebody to agree with our opinions, even when they're wrong, because we need self-confidence. That's what we think we need. Okay? So what we think we need is not necessarily what we need on a spiritual practice. Okay, and that's very important to be clear about in our own mind. Otherwise, we're going to fight everything hook, line, and sinker. So, what we need, actually, is an open, receptive mind that is willing to try some new things, that is willing to challenge our old habits, that is willing to say, I'm wrong, or I made a mistake, or I don't know what in the world I'm doing. Yeah, that's what we actually need. But that involves us changing. And what we think we need involves the world outside of us changing. Yeah. So if you came to the Abbey so that you can be with nice people who are always going to say what you like, then what's, you've got the wrong place, don't you? Yeah. Yeah. Of course, if you're a guest, then guests always get treated very nicely, because you're here for a short time, you're our guests, we treat you well. But then when you go from being a guest to a resident, then you think, I'm just going to have more of the above. They're going to treat me even nicer now because I'm a resident. Wrong. Once you make that commitment and you're a resident, what you're committing yourself to is working on your own mind. Yeah, you're committing yourself to challenging your old habits. Yeah, to reevaluating your assumptions and preconceptions. Yeah, that's what you're committing yourself to. And for you to do that, if the whole world agreed with you and pampered you and said how wonderful you were, would you start to do that internal investigation of your own weaknesses and faults? No. Okay? So, you have to be prepared for what you're getting yourself into. Or something else. I don't know. Yeah. Do what you always did somewhere else. Okay. Yeah, and you do that somewhere else. You don't do it here. Okay. Because when we all come here, we do what we did somewhere else. Does it work here? Yeah. We've all tried our old patterns here, haven't we? Yeah. Do they work? Yeah. Do people put up with them? Maybe. I hope. No, people don't do that. Okay. So, when you really want to practice, you have to expect to be challenged, And it's the challenge is one that you have volunteered for. No one's forcing it on you. Yeah. No one makes us practice the Dharma. No one's guilt-tripping us into practicing the Dharma. It's one that we're choosing to do. Yeah. And it brings benefit. Yeah. If we actually engage, it brings a lot of benefit.